I hope everyone out there had a very enjoyable holiday weekend. Here on the north central coast of Florida, the weather did abate and we had an absolutely beautiful evening for watching fireworks. But having conversations with some of my neighbors, we all agreed that the celebrations were a great deal more subdued than they have been in the past. And I think that just goes to the fact that a lot of people don't have a lot of money right now to be wasting on fireworks. Nevertheless, I do think everyone had a good time. I always want to lead off by saying thank you, however, to those who have joined us over at the Florida Maquis Patreon channel. It's only $1 per month, not per video, not per week. There are no special levels. It's even less if you sign up for an entire year. I was trying to get the third installment of Survival for Men up this weekend. It will be up either tonight or tomorrow for sure. Thank you for your patience on that. We would love to have you. We finished up a 4-part series, Survival for Women. For those of you who haven't joined us over there, check that out. Psychology is going to be a much bigger deal than people think it is. Now, I would also like to say thank you to everyone who has come to the music videos that I've been trying to trickle out recently. Now, just full disclosure, some of these videos are over a decade old, well over a decade old. This is a very, very different time, and Nashville is a very difficult place. Someone said, why didn't you do music? Why didn't you pursue that? I did. It's a very, very difficult place, and there's no better evidence of this than something I would also like to lead off with, something positive, something that could be uplifting to people. There is an artist you've never heard of, and technically, she is a better vocalist than virtually every female artist in Nashville right now. That includes Sarah Evans, Carrie Underwood, Miranda Lambert, Taylor Swift, you name it. If you've ever heard Tia Goen sing, it will take your breath away. But it is evidence of something that has happened in Nashville, that great artists like this, unless they do certain things, unless they compromise certain ways, you're never going to hear from them. And unless something like my channel or a larger channel would promote them, it is just a very, very tough slog. But I think it's tied to something that happened in Nashville about 170 years ago during the War of Northern Aggression. But we're going to save that for the folks over at Patreon because, of course, here we have to keep things a little more bland. We can't talk about things like adults. We can't talk about things with the gloves off. Here, we have to do that over at Patreon. That's why I encourage everyone, for only $1 a month, you can see raw, unedited content where we talk about the realities. Speaking of realities, there is something going on right now that is just nothing short of revisionist history. There are folks out there talking about preparing for the next big collapse, preparing for the new Depression era events that are coming down the pike. We have a template to look back at and see what happened during the Depression and how people reacted to it. Some come back and say, well, Florida Maquis, those were very different people and those were very different times and values were different. That's all true. I totally agree with that. But human nature has not changed. Base human nature has not changed. When stress comes, there are only a handful of ways that people deal with it. We're starting to see things like Highland Park. That's one way. But when the lights go out long term, you see, the lights haven't gone out yet, and people are already snapping. The Depression, 1933, 9,000 banks failed. People didn't fail. The banks did. 30,000 companies out of business in 1932 alone. People were showing up for work. People were ready to work and do their jobs. See, people weren't the problem. There was a system that was put in place that was destined to fail. 12 million people out of work. Income dropped from 2,300 to 1,600. Yet there were signs like this up everywhere. World's highest standard of living. There's no way like the American way. And of course, the big happy family with the dog and the car. Yet, it was only a matter of years. Only a matter of years. Can you imagine getting a car like this for $100? Can you imagine? There's still a few of these floating around and they're worth millions. Truly. But the money. You see, this is really funny, the sign. $100 will buy this car. Not 20 loaves of bread, 50 pounds of meat, 70 pounds of grain. $100. Because the assumption here was still that the money inherently was worth something. Now, this is what and this is a hint. There was a huge demand for something during the Depression. I'd like everyone out there to go look up pre-code Hollywood. That's right, pre-code Hollywood. There's a big misconception about the good old days. This is the revisionist history part. Oh, if things were only like they were 100 years ago, they were so much more moral back then. Absolute bunk. When people get bored, and even now, with everything still working, things are expensive and there's a lot of stress and a lot of anxiety, but there's still high-speed internet. The power's still on, the air conditioning's still working. There's gas at the gas station. It's expensive, but you can get it. There's food in the grocery stores, generally speaking. Some things there are shortages. It's expensive, but it's out there. What happens when it all goes away? When you stare and stare and stare at that black mirror, nothing. And all the dopamine goes away. See, a lot of guys have turned to video games to satisfy a hunger that they have that they don't know they have. See, they can't go out in real life and get into firefights. So they do it online and they play video games. And it's addictive. It's a drug. When the drugs go away, not the drugs that you get from the pharmacy, when the Black Mirror drug goes away, you're not going to be able to run your generator just to play video games, but someone will. You mark my words. Grid will go down. A week will go by. Well, we've got to turn the generator back on anyway to make sure the meat doesn't go bad in the freezer. Or to run the fans. We might as well plug in the PlayStation. We might as well plug in the Xbox. Plug in the computer. And play games for a few hours. Wasting all that resource. Maybe listening to music. Downloaded podcasts. Maybe the net's up. Maybe it's not. See, this is the kind of stuff that people are going to need to pay attention to. Because if you think the COVID lockdown was bad, that was just a matter of the government lifting it. What happens when the power grid goes down for 6 months? What are people going to do to entertain themselves? What are people going to do? And it's like, Florida Marquis, that's not important. Don't kid yourself. There was a huge explosion in Hollywood during and right after the Great Depression. Demand for pre-code Hollywood movies skyrocketed because people were bored. Now, some might say, Florida Marquis, what does this have to do with this? U.S. Army, for the first time, buys light tanks for $1 billion, $1.1 billion for 96 light tanks. For light tanks, these are defensive tanks. This is not offensive weaponry. There's only one mission for this tank. This is for rolling through cities and quelling protests. That's the only role this tank plays. It is a tank that you would use to intimidate civilians, and you can get it on the cheap. The U.S. Army will receive light tanks for the first time since the Cold War. The Mobile Protected Firepower tank will become operational. General Dynamics Land System is the winner of the Mobile Protected Firepower program. The contract value is $1.1 billion. The U.S. Army will initially receive 96 tanks. First deliveries are scheduled for 1 year and 2 months from now. No, 4 months from now. July, August, September, October, November. I guess it's about 18 months. 18 months. December 2023. Built on the Griffin II. And if you don't think that's what they're used for, here's a video on YouTube talking about it. It's based on something called the ASCOD-2 tracked armored vehicle that the Philippine Army has. These are intimidation tanks. You see, who remembers the very beginning of the conflict over in the Ukraine, where everybody was talking about tank this, tank that, tank the other, and they were using the term quote-unquote tank to describe anything that had tracks on it. And people were trying to correct them, saying, well, that's an APC, no, that's this is this other thing. This is a cheap tank, quote-unquote, meant to intimidate people. On the battlefield, drones could take these out like they were nothing. See, the big heavy-duty T-72s, the big main battle tanks, those are super expensive. Super, super expensive. And those destroy roads. If you want to roll something down through a city like, I don't know, Detroit or Chicago, and you want to intimidate people, that's what this is for. That's all this is for. It's for show. These are show tanks. So I wonder why they think they're not going to need to do this. I wonder why. I'll give you a link to this video. Balatang Military. It's from 4 March of this year. Because apparently they're getting them as well. See, they're predicting something's coming. They're predicting that something is coming that they're not really prepared for. It's when the lights go out and there aren't high-speed internet connections for Periscope and live streaming video either here or on other platforms. People will record things. They'll power up their phones. Sure, there's solar generators that little handheld bricks that you can go set out in the sun, and they can juice up your phone over and over and over again, but without an internet connection. It's just a device where you can record things. And power comes back up, maybe the net comes back up, and you try to upload something like that. They'll never let it on any platform. They'll already be waiting for it. They will already be waiting for it. So, anyway, I just wanted to cover this issue. I know a lot of people probably didn't see that article from the Army. It's kind of a big deal. And I know people don't think that psychology is going to play a big role in what's coming, but trust me, when things go bad and when things go south and people get inside their own heads, and need that dopamine fix. See, at this time, the people that still had money, the people that knew there was something out there that they could use to distract from all of the negative, it was mostly men. Pre-code Hollywood. If you think things were so much more moral 100 years ago, I got some news for you. They weren't. Because people were bored. And I'll leave it there. But check out Tia Goins. Seriously. And tell me if I'm wrong. Listen to her sing. She sings a lot of old country music. That is my personal favorite, by the way. Some of it is very technically difficult to sing. Some of the stuff from Mickey Gilley and Ronnie Millsap, Merle Haggard. She has an absolutely amazing voice. And she ain't hard to look at. You see, but this shows you what's going on in Nashville. Way, way more talented than I've ever been. Way better singer. Absolutely incredible artist. 5 albums. But I guarantee the vast majority of my audience has never heard of Tia, T-E-E-A, Goins. Even though she's, to my mind, probably the finest vocalist in Nashville right now. So give her, check out, she's got her own website. She's got stuff all over YouTube. Not hard to find. Spotify, Apple Music, whatever you choose, she should be pretty easy to find. So I will leave it there, but God bless. Thank you once again, everyone who has joined us over at the Patreon channel. The third installment, Survival for Men, either later tonight or tomorrow for sure. Thank you for your patience. Very much appreciate it. God bless. Like, share, subscribe. We'll see you guys next time.